Good evening, everybody. It is December 11th, 2023, and this is the Guilford Board of Education Federal Meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And our first item of business is to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So everyone would join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great. So we will move right along to item number 3, which is action on minutes. The first one is 3.1, which is minutes of November 13th, 2023. Does anybody have any input on those minutes? If not, could I ask, thank you. Do I have a second? All in favor of approving minutes from November 13th, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 3.2 is our November 27th minutes. Can I have a motion on those?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, item number 4 is public comments for topics on our agenda. So this is an opportunity for anybody in the audience who would like to come up and speak to items on the agenda specifically. Doesn't look like we have anybody, so we will move along to the next item, which is item number 5. That is review and approval of expenditures for the month of November 2023, and the reviewer for the month is Noel Petra. So Noel,
Thank you. We reviewed all of this during our operations meeting, so I'll go through it one more time. November 2023 financial reports, fiscal year 2023 and 24 expenditures for the month of November 2023 were $5,179,382.33. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of November were 37.44% of the budget as compared to 38.21% in 2022 and 23. Revenue for November 2023 was $26,912.26, which includes $317.80 for non-resident tuition, $20,150 for the magnet transportation grant, $2,121.46 for Medicaid, and $4,323 for pre-K tuition. Salaries, the percentage of the budget expended approximates the prior year. Employee benefits, the percentage of the budget expended approximates the prior year. Urgent services, the percentage of budget expended is higher than the prior year. The credit in the dues and fees line is due to a correction of expenses to professional development, and the credit in the postage line is due to a correction in the expense for the high school postage meter to the correct account. Tuition, the percentage of the budget expended is lower than the prior year. The variance is due to the timing of payments. Supply and materials, the percentage of the budget expended is lower than the prior year. Capital, the percentage of the budget expended is lower than the prior year. Transportation, the percentage of the budget expended is lower than the prior year. The warrant we are submitting is a total of all payments for the month listed alphabetically. The total payments detailed on the warrant is $2,435,222.48. We reviewed all of the warrants in detail at the operations meeting. That's my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Noel regarding the expenditures for the month? Great. Do I have a motion to accept his report on the financials for this month?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 6, communications. Does anyone on the board have any communications they'd like to share?
Just a number of people that have had input on the school calendar that we're going to be discussing a little bit later on.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
It was a nice, it was nice to see so many responses.
Yeah, I agree.
People reaching out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jen. Okay, moving on to item number 7, our student reps.
Okay, I can go first. So first doesn't talk about Adams. So at Adams, at the end of the week, or at the end of November, they had Spirit Week. The PTO also sponsored an author's visit. So they had an author's visit with Baron Johnson. And so he talked about his writing process, and they even showed students some pictures of his writing before and after he sent it to the editor. So they got to kind of get an inside look at at like the writing process and how the whole publication process works. The winter sports are in full swing, I think. I think the girls basketball, and boys basketball are the only two teams to actually have games yet. But they're all practices and stuff are starting up. Peer helpers group went caroling around the green this past week, and they're also running a toy and pet supply drive. And then the 8th grade band and orchestra concert is this upcoming Wednesday. And then Voices is going to go and sing to the 8th graders next week. At Guilford Lakes, sort of going back a little while, Veterans Day, they had over 50 local veterans and members, like family members of students, and they're all somewhat involved in the Guilford Lakes community. Came to visit and talk to students and sort of experience some sort of celebration. Both the 2nd and 4th grade went to the Eli Whitney Museum. They went on separate occasions, but they both got to go and practice different and sort of apply different things about what they're learning. PTO also sponsored an author's visit with Sarah Levine to visit pre-K and kindergarten classes, and she's gonna come back in the next couple of weeks to talk to the 1st through 4th graders. They also had their yearly recycled art show. So I got to see some pictures of, I saw an ice cream dispenser. I saw a robot, an old telephone, a toilet. It's a whole bunch of different art projects there. They also are doing a toy drive for the police department, and the first graders had some art that is getting published or getting put on display at the Brantford Compassion Club, and there's going to be an open house in January to see them.
Starting off with Calvin Lee. In art class, 2nd graders have been studying cave art created by Neanderthals from the early periods of the Ice Age in Europe and parts of Asia. Using prehistoric and geometric symbols, students developed and drew scenes by creating their own symbolic stories. Their work surfaces made from crumbled paper to mimic the cave drawings. Cave walls proved to be very tricky to draw upon. Mrs. Dos Anjos's and Mrs. Froelich's 4th grade students studied poetry in depth. They studied the forms and functions of poetry, learned about the lives of famous poets, and they read many poems and wrote their own poems and essays about poetry. And recently, they proudly presented to their own families, showing off their artistic expression and confidence. Mr. Abraham received a wonderful email a little while ago from a 1st grade teacher in Texas, congratulating Calvin Lee for composing and sharing the Shoes Love song. I won't recite it right now, but it's a great song, I assure you. The teacher in Texas cited what an incredible inspiration the song had been to her students and how they sing it every morning to start off the class. Yeah. On to Melissa Jones. As I'm sure many, if not all of us are aware, there will be a new principal coming to Melissa Jones. The students are sad to see Ms. Hahn go, but are excited to welcome Mr. Regan. Right now, the Scholastic Book Fair is going on at Jones, and students are enjoying flexing their reading prowess and their youthful financial independence. Last Friday, students from the 1st grade took a trip to the Leitner Family Planetarium in New Haven. It was a great chance for them to learn more about the world that our world is a part of. And everyone at Jones who will participate in a hot cocoa social on the 14th, this Thursday at 6 p.m. Can't wait for it. I know I'd love some, but I don't think I'm invited, so.
Perfect. And then with Abraham Baldwin Middle School. GHS senior AJ LaFada made improvements on one of the trails located behind Baldwin. He landscaped the trailhead and designed and built a trail kiosk, marking the beginning of a newly named Abraham Baldwin Trail. The kiosk includes information about Abraham Baldwin's many contributions to the birth of our nation. On Tuesday, December 5th, AJ held a ceremony that includes Mr. Hamill, Mr. Ross, town historian John Hellender, and trail advocate Bill Johnson, and the entire Baldwin Hiking Club. At the ceremony, Baldwin students learned about the steps AJ took to make this project a success, and AJ answered questions from the students. AJ provided a great example of how the mastery-based diploma experience can be very valuable learning experience, connecting him with a variety of people in the community and learning from each of them. Last week, Baldwin students participated in the Hour of Code initiative to highlight computer science. Teachers facilitated computer simulations, programming, and coding activities. Our students enjoy these opportunities and many continue to explore resources and activities during our daily enrichment period. We're looking forward to our visit from the GHS Voices on Wednesday, December 20th. Just after student arrival, Voices will start our day with holiday music. The visit is a BMS favorite. We're looking forward to welcoming Miss Allen and all members of the Voices. My personal favorite back in the day, the Cocoa Cafe. The student council will be hosting an annual Cocoa Cafe on Thursday, December 21st. This Baldwin Middle School tradition is highlighted by performances by members of our bands and stream program. From Ms. Hammond at AW Cox, she said, "We are excited to have the Voices from GHS come visit AW Cox next Wednesday. We also have Steve Songs coming to join us next week for assemblies to sing songs aligned with our school focus on belonging, kindness, and respect." Oh, yeah. And then for GHS, former GHS student Jacob Halsema, who graduated in the class of 2021, made a documentary on the Thanksgiving Guilford hand football game. It really gave a good school spirit, despite the loss that we did have. It really showed Coach White's motivation to the players and the team's efforts to break this curse. But most importantly, the video showed what this program, the football program, means to these players.
And we were ahead of one more.
We were ahead.
Next year.
Some other stuff that's been going on at the high school, there's a whole bunch of concerts. They had the ones at the Green or at the church. The rep orchestra, concert band, mixed chorus, they all had concerts last week, and the jazz band also had several concerts. They had one where Latin Grammy Award winning the New York Afro Bop Alliance came, so the students got to work with them and then put on a concert with them, and they had a whole sort of workshop with anyone from anyone in 8th grade or in high school who was involved in music could come. George can probably talk more about that.
Yeah, the jazz band loved it. It was a great experience. It was really cool to hang out with professional musicians and just work alongside them. That's great.
The fall play also happened, I think, since the last time we had a meeting. So the complete works of William Shakespeare Abridged was I think a lot of people laughed about that.
Hilarious.
Fantastic.
But we also had the school blood drive. NHS had PJ Day, so they raised money, I think, for like a local cancer research.
That's right. That's right. Each year we choose a different organization, a charity to donate to. This year it was for local cancer research.
Anyone else?
We just got off the fall play, and the auditions for the spring musical are next week, I believe. It's right around the corner. If it was today.
This week.
Oh.
Today, yeah.
Yeah, students are really looking forward to being Legally Blonde. So
Legally
it's going to be a fun one. Yeah. I know seniors who applied early to colleges are starting to hear back from them. They're very stressed, but it's a fun time. It's a great experience. MBDA presentations are going on, like you were talking about with Mr. Lafata. I think tomorrow night in the Commons is the MBDA Gala.
Yes, board members, you all received invitations for the presentations.
Great. Yeah, it's a stressful time for seniors and for everyone, of course, but we're having a good year so far.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
So great to hear from you and all the stuff that's going on around our district. And yeah, that Afro-Bop performance on Friday was amazing, and you guys did amazing in the jazz ensemble. So we have superbly creative students in our district, and we're so lucky. We have to always remember to support that. Okay, so we will move on to item number 8, the superintendent's report. Dr. Oops.
Release the students.
Oh, my
You guys know that you're welcome to
My
stay.
apologies, you guys. You're welcome to stay, but you're also totally welcome to go. And I know it's a tough time of year. So unless there's anything else you want to offer to us or touch on.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
I need to start by apologizing to the board. Item 8.1, the asset survey results presentation. You know that we do the biannual student asset survey, and we had presenters from Day who were prepared to share that with you tonight. We were, however, unable to get the technology working. We have tabled that presentation. We will invite our partners from Day to come back in January and make that presentation to all of you. I also want to invite Dr. Goss to give you the update on the kindergarten entrance age.
So as you probably know, the kindergarten entrance age was changed from January 1st of the coming year, needing to be 5 to September 1st. But with the caveat that petitioning the board, a parent could ask for an assessment of their child. The school could assess the child, and then pending a vote of the board, actually, the child can be admitted. So we have sent out to the community information that students who will turn 5 after September 1st of this coming year, but before January 1st of 2025, will be able to meet with the school principal for an assessment of their skills. Principal will then share that information with the parent and sort of talk through where the child is in comparison to other students that we've had in kindergarten, and make the decision about whether or not the family will get to decide whether or not they would like to petition you to admit that child. So we will then bring probably not a list of names, but probably a number of students who we would be asking you to admit to our kindergarten class.
So we would attest to you that we met with 7 families, that we found all 7 students to be ready for school, and asked you to approve the enrollment of those 7 students as identified by our elementary staff, rather than asking you to approve individual names. And we are not sure, as this is the first year, if we will have that approval for you at the August meeting, at your first September meeting. We'll work out the timelines around that. Should it come at the September meeting, we would obviously allow those students to enroll and begin attending prospectively, and assuming a positive vote from all of you. But we'll work out those details as we move forward.
What does the appeal process look like if the meeting does not go to the parents' wishes? If the principal deems that the student's not ready.
The state has not detailed an appeal process at this time. And that would be new ground that would be broken as we move forward. The fact is, we anticipate that most parents making that request in Guilford, that the students will likely be ready. Remember, we've been enrolling those students in kindergarten for as long as we can all remember. So we think it relatively, we don't think it's going to be a significantly large number, and we think it relatively unlikely that we will be denying enrollment. As Dr. Goss said, there will be conversations with the parents to talk about readiness and to discuss options, but we're hopeful that we don't run into a confrontational situation.
We are one of the last states to have this extended January with December 31st date. Most, I think, we're one of only 2 states that doesn't go back to the September 1. So eventually it'll probably become more natural that our kids, but it's nice to have this opportunity for parents in these first few years.
This year specifically, we had parents who had been planning to have their children enter kindergarten this September. And I think you're right. I think as years pass, we'll find the September date becoming more the norm as parents adjust to it and get used to it.
My only question was, you mentioned like an assessment. Would it be more just a conversation, or is that an actual TBD kind of thing? Is the state suggesting how to help screen for that information?
No, this was left up to the individual districts.
Gotcha.
I think we were looking at the kindergarten entrance inventory, which is really a conversation with the parent, looking at it's a series of about 15 questions of things that kindergartners generally can do as they enter. And it would just be a conversation about the child's readiness to do those things. If we were a district with universal preschool, this might be a different conversation, but because we would not be turning children back necessarily to a preschool program, I think it's unlikely that we would be asking parents to come back in a year.
Great. Thank you.
And parents, if they find a month in it's not right, they can always pull their child and wait for the following year. It's not that they're then required to have that child see out the year, because they can have the option of coming back and enrolling the following year. Okay. Any other questions on this?
And if I could just touch on one item before, and George stole my thunder, but I did want to reiterate a communication that the community received. And while we do not have a personnel item in this packet, I did want to note that Principal Michelle Hand has informed us that she will be moving on. She will be going to work at Learn. She's moving on to become a consultant. So she will be telling other people how to be a successful principal moving forward. We expect her last day will be the last day with students as we move into the winter break. We have been fortunate to secure Mr. Mike Regan, who will be coming out of retirement to serve as an interim principal for us at Jones Elementary School for the entire second half of the school year. We anticipate Mike will be with us until the last day of school in June. In the next couple of weeks, we will be finalizing and then sharing the details around the new search calendar. So we will have a really healthy amount of time to advertise properly, to really search for the next principal at Jones Elementary School, and that person will begin for us on July 1. That allows us to secure the best, most competitive pool for candidates. Asking a candidate to start in the middle of the year,
Right.
you tend not to get the best pool of candidates. And so with Mike in the school, we know that we will extend it and have a new principal announced early, hopefully, and then ready to begin on July 1. I also wanted to note that between now and that winter break, Mr. Regan will be spending a few days in the school shadowing Mrs. Han and introducing himself to the teachers and to the students before he steps into that interim position. And we are incredibly grateful to Mike to be coming out of retirement so soon to help us out.
Yeah, we sure.
And happy for Michelle, although we will miss her.
We've been really fortunate in the past to have retiring principals come back and support us. Some from other districts, some with them. So that's wonderful. Okay, great.
And that concludes our report for tonight.
Thank you.
Look at that.
That's efficient.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to item number 9, board agenda. Our first item is item number 9.1, which is a personnel item. This is to ratify the resignation of the following teacher: Jennifer Landry, special education, Guilford High School. The effective date is retroactive to November 30th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 9.2 is to approve a donation of $1,849 from the Adams Middle School Band Boosters for the purchase of a euphonium. Specialized instrument that they will then bring into their collection. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Okay.
Ask him what euphonium was.
Yeah. Okay, item number 9.3 is act on the 2024-25 school calendar drafts. So I'll just go through just briefly. We had Dr. Freeman had brought 2 calendars to us about 2 months ago. This is a receive item. And we've taken time, we've actually extended the time to get public input and to hear from folks, either in person communication here or by email. The only real difference between draft number 1 is that in draft number 1, the first school day is the day after Labor Day, which would be September 3rd of 2024, with 3 professional development days starting on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. That's only for teachers. The students would return on September 3rd. Last day of school would be Monday, the 16th. Draft number 2 has the first day of school being Thursday, August 29th, with that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday being professional days for the teachers, with a last day of school being June 11th. So I will just share the data that we collected from communications. We received about a 2-to-1 margin in favor of after Labor Day start date versus before. There was other data that we collected just to understand if there were any policy impacts, and per Dr. Freeman and other administrators, there are no policy impacts in terms of either date start. And we've consulted around the CIAC, but I believe that if we want to have any more clarification on that, I think we can have that conversation as well. But just wanted to share that's the data, that's the input we received. And I'm happy to open it up for a conversation.
My question is to Dr. Freeman regarding the changes to the fall CIAC schedule and how that might impact our student athletes if we start after Labor Day.
Yeah, so the CIAC recently made a change to summer start dates. And so high school athletes will be able to begin practicing this year on August 19th. And I spoke to Mr. Jarvis earlier today. The earliest competitions that we have scheduled in Guilford happen on September 3rd. We've got cross-country events happening on September 3rd. The start date will really not have any direct impact on either of those things. So August 19th is going to come before our start date, regardless of which calendar you approve tonight. We will have cross-country events, our first cross-country contest happening very early in the school year, regardless of which calendar you approve here tonight. It does create some complications for fall sports, particularly for students who had not been on the team previously. So there is some complication for freshmen or for sophomores, juniors, and seniors who might want to go out for cross-country and didn't do it the year prior. The coaches will be communicating with incumbent students about when those first practices occur. Simply don't have a vehicle in place to be able to contact students who aren't currently on the team but may want to be on the team. But again, that complication is going to exist regardless of which calendar you approve here tonight. I have noted, and I will note again, that complication might be greater if the difference in the two start dates were broader. This year, the difference is only 2 or 3 days. In a year where the difference is 5 or 6 days, there might need to be more conversation. But this year, Mr. Jarvis's assessment was that the two calendars are a wash from the athletic perspective.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
And what I heard from one of the fall sports coaches was that we're the only school in the SEC conference that starts after Labor Day. Do you know if that's
I-
truth?
I don't know if
Don't
that's
know.
true. I'd have to confirm. I know that there are more schools that start before than after. I know that we're not the only school that starts after. I didn't break it down by conference. I'd have to go back and check.
And like I said, this is one particular sport. So in that sport, it's my understanding you're the only one.
I can neither confirm or deny.
If I could just make a comment on that level, you know, there's a lot that goes into this. We heard a lot of different great points on both sides, for and against. From what I'm hearing and from taking all that input, you know, this may be the year that we should start before Labor Day, because it really doesn't make a difference. So that if in the future we do have to start before Labor Day, it's not such a shock to the system. So that might be something that we need to consider. But that's my point.
It's a valid point. I mean, I think what's unique to this is we did get a good amount of communication.
Yeah.
You know? And that's always what we want, right? We're kind of asking for input, and we got input.
Yeah.
You know,
I even have people who are texting me and I said, please email,
Right.
because I need to see it. We need to receive it formally just to have that as a consideration. But to Jen's point, like there's just been a lot of conversations and, you know, friends seeing you in the grocery store, but yeah, to your point. It's important.
I think some of the most common feedback I heard in favor of starting before came from other educators who are in different districts who have children in Guilford. That seemed to be very common. Working parents with young kids and the alignment of summer camps. And then we heard from working parents who said after Labor Day too. So there's always both sides. And then, you know, the one I think I can identify with in my house is, you know, come May, end of May, early June, you feel that like summertime itch coming on. And then by the time the August rolls around, you're kind of ready for the routine. So to that end, getting the summer started a little earlier and then heading back before Labor Day. And then in our house, we actually do have this situation where we have a kid in New Haven and then another in Guilford. So it's different schedules, but yeah, it was great to just hear so much constructive input.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I was really grateful that we heard from so many people. Yeah, we asked for public feedback and we really, I think, had the most that we had on almost any topic in the time that I've been on the board, which was really helpful.
There are years we hear from nobody.
Yes,
Yeah.
and to that end, I personally feel like we should adopt the first calendar, which is the after Labor Day, because we did have, I think it was like a 2/3 to 1/3 in terms of my personal tallies for people that I heard from, in addition to what we received collectively to start after. I also checked with some of the coaches for the fall, and it doesn't sound like I was actually under the impression that we could start 2 weeks prior to a start date. I thought that like the start date actually affected when we could start, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It's like a set.
CIAC
start.
says the start.
August 19th.
So that made me feel much more comfortable starting after Labor Day, particularly this year, since it's just a couple days.
Right, I think the difference is you can't have any competitions you can start practices, but you can't compete, I don't believe, until the school year starts.
No, I actually clarified that, and we will have our first competition on September 3rd. And again,
First day of
right,
school.
and so
Okay,
even if
first
we
day.
voted tonight to start school on September 4th, that cross-country team could be competing, they would have started practicing on the 19th, and I needed to clarify that as well. I think I said exactly what you just said at your last meeting. I spoke to Mr. Jarvis and clarified.
Awesome. Dr. Freeman, with this 19th state, that's that I know, because sometimes the kids will have like captains practices, and those are kind of not unsanctioned, but the captains are allowed to hold like workout practices. But for coaching, that now means our coaches are on staff working much earlier in
So-
terms of our stipends for coaches. So is that going to be something we need to consider going into budget season at all? I mean, it's probably minimal, but I'm just curious if that's a thought.
The CIAC allows practice to begin on the 19th. It doesn't mandate that you do so. And our coaching stipends are embedded in the teacher bargaining agreement.
Right.
I do think that we need to look at those coaching stipends when we bring that contract forward.
Yep.
Oftentimes in the negotiation, that ends up being pushed a little to the side because the coaches represent such a small portion of the overall teaching staff, and it's such a small portion of what a teacher does when they choose to coach. We also have a number of coaches who don't work under the teacher contract. They're residents or parents in the community. I think it's going to be incumbent upon us as the board to bring forward a correction to coaching stipends and not expect the teachers to bring it forward, because I think changes like that and the changing environment around coaching in the community is going to require us to increase the compensation for coaches. Right now, an assistant coach makes approximately $3,000 a season, and a head coach makes approximately $5,000 a season, and they do a lot more work than that, and they deal with a really emotional program. And so I think we as the board will have to make a suggestion that we change that. It will have to wait, not for the next budget cycle, but for the next contract
I
negotiation.
realize that. Yeah. Okay.
And the changes to the CIAC, is it in an effort to get the fall season done earlier?
No, I think it's an effort to balance
extend
out
it.
the fall season, which is shorter than the
Got it.
spring.
Okay.
And I think the winter may be even shorter still. I can't exactly articulate the logic of the CAAC because I'm not sure I understand it, but I think that may have been the effort.
Yeah.
I do have concerns about some unintended consequences of the change and the impact it may have on essentially a volunteer coach
Right.
cohort.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So part of our conversation is about summer ending and when does summer end? And right, there's an expectation baked into that anybody who coaches one of our fall seasons is now available to begin work on August 19th. And I don't know that everybody who has signed up again for what's essentially a volunteer activity has built that into their planning around it.
Well, also think of families, right? If that's,
Yeah.
yes, it's important that we keep talking about this, right? Because it's not as simple as August 19th. There's a lot of
Right.
implications.
I do think as it impacts this specific choice between these two calendars, however, to Mr. Jarvis, it's a wash.
Thank you.
I did also want to point out, I know we're focused right now a lot on the start date, and I know we clarified this in the previous meeting, but just for the public somebody also asked if they could get access to the visuals. I think they said it would have helped the public just to kind of visually
It's
see.
on the website.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was the
Yeah.
email that came today.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. But we would be potentially encroaching, depending on snow days with the later start into Juneteenth. So then could potentially, depending on the year, be a couple days, a holiday, and then closing out the school year. So we are really getting closer to the end of June in that scenario.
To that point, graduation's already been solidified
Mhm.
though as the 16th, right?
No, it hasn't been, but
Okay.
it can't be earlier than the 16th because we don't have more than 180 school days.
Right. Okay.
So should you approve either one of these calendars tonight, you'll be able to then
Lock in that.
cement in place a graduation date in your very first meeting in July. We don't have, and then once it's locked in place, it doesn't matter if because of floods or snow or locusts, if we lose school days after that fact, then you don't have to change the graduation date. It does have the last day of school on a Monday if it is unaffected. So should you approve calendar one tonight, I think that conversation about locking in a graduation date may be interesting. I don't know that we've ever had a Monday graduation before.
Wasn't be the nature, right, of as our calendar, like, because last year I feel like our last day of school bumped into Juneteenth, didn't it?
did. We had
Yeah.
school, yes.
Yeah,
We
okay.
had school on June 20th.
That's
but
right.
Not on the
That's
19th,
right.
correct?
Right, we had off on the 19th and the kids went back just for the 20th.
Yes.
Okay,
And calendar 2 builds in more room before you bump up against that holiday.
okay. All right,
One more for clarification, sorry, we're making such great headway here, but I did have a constituent ask if you could just clarify, I don't know, from where to
sure.
why that universal calendar that was discussed is just a moot point at this point. A couple of them shared articles, I guess it was from like 2017, where there was a statewide initiative and
Yeah.
it looked like it was moving forward, and then
It's
I know
really
you both spoke
complicated.
pretty confidently, like, I don't mean to open a can of worms, but they just specifically said, could you explain why so confidently that's kind of not happening?
It comes down to, I mean, I've asked this too at the
Yeah.
state level, and it's local control versus state control, and basically telling districts what to do with their
Okay.
time. Because there's flexibility that's already built into how we accomplish those days. And to Dr. Freeman's point, some districts go over the 180 days. Like I
Right.
think Madison
Okay.
goes over by a few days. It would kind of retract all of that.
Gotcha.
And so it gets prickly. You know, to be honest with you, I think that's it. It's just trying to get that buy-in from everybody is a little, and I would just say as a legislator, I wouldn't want to be the person telling every district what to do with their calendars. I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the sentiment. I don't want to speak for other, you know.
Oh, I agree. I agree with everything that you just said. And I would just clarify that my really confident statement at the last meeting was made as a commentator, not as a decision maker.
Mhm.
So as I sit back and look at 169 towns and the legislature, I don't see the political will to move the state to a unified calendar. For some school districts, that could include expense. And so if the state were to do that, some folks would identify it as an unfunded mandate. Others would see it as a loss of local control. And I just don't see the political will to move in that direction. But that is an opinion and a reading of the tea leaves. It's nothing more than that, although it's a pretty confident opinion.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you both for clarifying.
And if I may, if I could add one more clarification, and I apologize, I should have noted this last time we met. This has no impact on your decision tonight, and this will be in place regardless of which calendar you approve tonight. But I did want to remind the board and begin informing the community that when we last negotiated a contract with the teachers, we identified a practice in the district that was in fact violating the teacher contract, and that is back to school nights. The teacher contract in Guilford reads very clearly that when teachers are required to attend an evening after school hours, that we will have an early release on the day of that event. Traditionally in Guilford, we've been having a full school day in the early days of the school year in September, and then inviting parents in for a back to school night that occurs on that same evening. That's very different than when we have parent conferences and the students are excused early and the teachers then work late into the evening. So that error was recognized, and in the last contract negotiated with the teachers, we agreed that in school year 24-25, we would make that right. We would follow the language as it's clearly written in the calendar, in the contract rather. So what that means is that in addition to the early release days when your students have back to parent conferences, there'll be one additional early release day at each school for that back to school night. So it is a practice that we're comfortable with. We're just not used to having one happen in September that early in the school year. So once this calendar is approved and we send it out for public consumption, we will add that information. We will then remind the community at the end of this school year, and we will remind everybody again as we open next year so that parents can anticipate and be prepared for that one additional early release day. And it will be different, right? We don't have all the back to school nights on the same night because many families have students at the middle, elementary and high school levels. So it would be, again, different days, just as the parent conferences fall on different days. And again, it doesn't affect your decision tonight. I just wanted to start getting that information out.
One other thing that came up late, kind of late in the game, was this idea around parent conferences. And I guess this year, leading right up to Thanksgiving, we had an elementary parent conferences, and I'm glad to see that next year that's not going to happen. It looks like it's the week before, the Monday and Tuesday, because I think that was a little bit of a crunch for families right before the holidays.
Yes, it was tough to navigate
Yeah.
in the same week.
But
Agreed.
that's not gonna happen with either calendar, right? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, either one. Okay, perfect. Okay,
I would that based on public feedback in favor of starting after Labor Day, that we adopt draft one, which would be a start date of Tuesday, September 3rd.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, thank you. Okay, so
You want to ask for opposing votes?
yes, do you have anybody opposed?
Aye.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So the motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you all, everyone, for their really the attention to this and the feedback. I don't remember in 6 years ever discussing the calendar at this length, so this is great.
Yep.
And this is what we want to come out of our conversation. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to the public for participating. Democracy in action. Okay, great. So moving on to our next calendar item, 9.4 is act on our 2024 Board of Education meeting calendar draft. And we have an exhibit in front of us. And I just want to clarify this, the vote on our school calendar has no impact on this. So we have a draft calendar for our regular meetings, which are typically on Mondays with the exception of a few Tuesdays for holidays. And then we have our workshop meetings on this calendar, which are typically carried about once a month at different school locations. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this? So do I have a motion?
So.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 9.5. We have the 2024 Board of Education Operations, Curriculum, Instruction and Assessment and Policy Committee meeting drafts. And again, these are our 3 primary Board of Ed committees, and they typically fall, the operations meetings are typically the earlier of the same night as our general meetings, and then our policy and curriculum meetings are interspersed throughout the years, typically about 4 or 5 meetings a year. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 9.6. These are receive items only, so we will not be voting, and these are recommendations from the policy committee. We have 2 policies. 9.6.1 is a policy and regulation, number 5118, regarding attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism. I just want to turn it to Mrs. Peck. If you want to make any quick references to that.
Okay, so policy 5118 is really remaining unchanged. Policy, the regulation for 5118 is however changing. And the intent of this change, I'll just actually, it's a relatively long regulation, so you guys can read through, but if you scroll down to the very end, which is section 4, attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism. The change that we are suggesting is that for a second cut for a semester in the same class, a student normally loses credit. The parent or guardian will then be notified of the potential loss of credit, and a plan to restore the student's good standing may be made. So historically, there's been no option for a student to regain the lost work. So we're changing that so that after a meeting, after discussion, the student may in fact be able to be made whole or partially whole, where they didn't have that option before. And again, an unexplained absence in one or both periods of a double period class will result first in a second cut of any type in this course. It used to say will result in a loss of credit, and now it will read may result in a loss of credit. So again, it just gives us a little flexibility to try to keep students on the right path so that we can give them an opportunity to correct a mistake. So those are really the changes to review for regulation 5118. Again, policy 5118 is not changed. Anything to add?
Nope.
Okay,
Very good.
so again,
Those are
receive
receivable.
item,
Yeah.
so let's receive that.
So take a look.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 9.6.2 is policy and regulation number 6310, graduation requirements.
Yes, okay, so we've got slight changes coming in our graduation requirements.
which will go into effect for this year's freshman class, so class of 2027. And the most significant change is that our master-based diploma assessment is actually getting reduced from 1 full credit to a half a credit. And the other half a credit is a financial literacy half credit. That's going to be a requirement for this year's freshman class. So again, take a look through that. That is the only change. I think that's the only change, right?
It is.
For the policy.
We are making that change to stay current with state requirements. That is not a change that we are fitly making on our own after all the work that we put into the mastery-based graduation requirement.
And it does sound like it was kind of in keeping with the way that we had been approaching the master-based diploma assessment program anyway. This isn't a gigantic
Right.
leap.
We can make it
It's-
work, yes.
Yeah. it sounded like it
Finance was a significant
yes, it
part of
was a
it.
substantial section of that class. So this isn't, it's a differentiation, but almost not necessarily a actual
A
change.
lot of districts were already doing it, but this is just to kind of make sure.
Mhm. And then the other addition that the regulation 6310 adds is that everyone prior to graduation, every year, all students must fill out a FAFSA form, which is a financial aid requirement. So every student will have to do that every year. That sounds fun.
They're supposedly making it easier, although it's delayed in coming out for this year, but it's
Yes.
supposed to be making it
That'll be changed.
more user friendly.
Oh, and then the other thing is that this is another exciting little change. The credits that students earned at the middle school, so at Adams particularly, in a high school level class are now they're going to be able to get credit for it at the high
That's so
school.
great.
Correct. That'll primarily apply to students who take algebra in the 8th grade. And it's very exciting. It's
Yeah,
good.
that's great. Is that retroactive or that will just be for existing students? Like if there's a freshman that did that at Adams.
This year's freshman.
Yeah, it applies to this year's freshman
Oh, okay.
class.
So,
So it could
so
apply
they're
to 8th
freshmen
grade.
now, but they did that at Adams. Will they get that credit?
No,
No, it's moving forward.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, well.
Corrected.
okay, that's good to know. Maybe that's helpful to communicate to freshman parents. It might be. I don't know if we can, or maybe there's some way to let parents know that, because that, so they'll have sorry, Julia.
We
thank
could
you.
identify those students.
Yeah.
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 We're gonna let Ms. Chaff help us out.
Just as they're navigating their course selections as they go up.
Right.
A very valid point. We're waiting until you have finalized your process to make it official, and then we're with Dr. Goss, we're going to work on communication regarding that in particular, and then we also need to work with our school counseling department in terms of how to help look at those credits in terms of, making sure that we do it correctly, and there's going to have to be some backtracking, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
So will they then, because typically the high school math requirement is.
There's
weird.
some students, very few students take geometry. Most students at Adams take Algebra 1, and it's the same course standards that we teach at the high school. So you would come in with that math credit in place. And as a result, it would allow for some diversification in terms of the coursework that you take, because you still have a 4 credit requirement. So plus a STEM credit as well. So it's going to allow for a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you fulfill those math credits and the 1 STEM credits that is required. And I think it's sort of exciting as a result too, because it allows us to maybe diversify some of the course offerings that we have at the high school. In terms of, we're looking at pathways and using the dual credit grant that Dr. Goss has brought into play to look at course offerings in mathematics, but also in other disciplines as well. So I think it's exciting in terms of, it'll allow for a student to have more choice in how they fulfill their graduation credit requirements. And I think that'll be more interesting for them, for each individual student as a result.
But I do think we have some time to work that out. So we always counted the Adams course as a prerequisite for other math courses. And so students almost to an individual will take algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry. Where it will be different is as they get into their junior and senior year, and now they have those extra credits already in the bank, it will allow them the flexibility to take some other courses in those last 2 years.
Right.
So I don't think it'll necessarily impact whether or not a student goes on to take geometry next, but it will change decisions they could make in their junior and senior year. So we've got the time to do that reverse engineering and make sure that we work with the students individually and their school counselors to make those decisions.
Does the grade come into their high school transcript? Or is it just the credit?
I think that those details still need to be ironed
yeah.
out. I think that we would get input from the school counseling staff as well as maybe look into how other schools are doing that.
Yeah.
I will say that traditionally, when you transfer in from another school, the credits are listed on a separate transcript. And so in colleges and universities tend to list, if you're a transfer student, credits that you've taken at another institution, but didn't necessarily earn at that college or university. So there's different ways that we can show that the credit has been earned without it affecting, the way the rest of the transcript is listed. I think there would need to be some sort of demarcation probably, but those kinds of details haven't been worked out yet.
I'm not sure that most districts have answered that question yet.
Yeah.
We're gonna have
So
a,
freshman grades don't count toward a GPA anyway, so it may wind up somewhat irrelevant about if the grades carry.
Yeah.
it wouldn't affect
Some
that
schools-
final calculation. It would just be whether it shows on the transcript or not.
It's still on the transcript, but it's not calculated.
What
Yeah.
percentage of our students that at least take algebra 1?
That's a relatively small percentage. I don't have that exact number tonight, but I could get it for you. But it's a relatively low number of students who take Algebra 1 from Adams every year.
Thank you.
All right,
Anything else? Those policies? No, those are receive items, and so we'll have time to look them over, ask more questions and move forward. Great. Okay, then moving on to item number 10, reports of committees, policy committee. 10.1.
Sure, we had our meeting a couple of weeks ago. And Ms. Chaff joined us. We were kind of lucky to just have an open discussion about policies that we might want to discuss. We talked about the possibility of looking at cell phone policy, which it sounds like the high school minimally has kind of left that to each individual classroom, and that seems to be working pretty well. And we talked about dress code and whether or not that was something we wanted to bring up, which sounds like, again, it's been pretty well handled. So it was a great meeting. We obviously discussed the changes that we went over today. And then just kind of brainstormed about other topics that we might want to discuss. So if people have other ideas, please send them to me.
Great, thank you. Item number 10.2, operations committee.
No real update.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had our meeting tonight, so yeah, everything went smoothly. Thank you. Item number 10.3, curriculum, instruction and assessment committee.
We haven't met since the last meeting, so have a commissioner meeting.
Thank you. Any liaisons to town committee reports that anyone wants to share? No? Okay, and we are still working on a liaison for our Learn Board of Directors, item 10.5. So we will move right on to 11, which is public comments. We just ask that anyone who's bringing their comments limited to 3 minutes. And if you could please identify your name and your address if you do want to come up and speak. Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Galvin, 20 Landon's Way. There's no sheet. Thank you for voting on the calendar. Was gonna say, Christy, we can't find it online. We did look. So if it is there, just let people know where. There's no exhibits link, and there's not none of the calendars. That's not really what I want to talk though. I had a question if you could share more in one of the upcoming meetings about what's gonna happen with Spanish at the elementary schools, that would be great. I know my 2 daughters are at Cox and there was a Spanish teacher last year. I know they didn't have funding to do that at all the elementary schools this year, but the board was going to look into that this year. It's been a very popular conversation at the last several PTO meetings of kind of what's the future? Are they looking into a STEM program? What's coming next? So I think it would be a great topic for the Board of Ed to talk in one of the upcoming meetings. So just an ask for a future agenda in the next couple of months. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come up and speak? Holiday season, folks are busy. Okay, well, then just item number 12 is any closing comments from board members and or administrators. No, everyone's good. Okay, thank you. All right, then item number 30 is an adjournment. So do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful holidays, however you celebrate, everybody,
holidays.
and all of you out there. Thank you.
Nice job.